Hey there, my name's Evelyn,
My name's Samandita.
and you're listening to HCI Ideas. HCI Ideas is a podcast where we discuss research, receive advice, and learn about the cool things taking place here at the Human Computer Interaction Institute of Carnegie Mellon University. For today's episode, we'll be speaking with Professor Haiyi Zhu about the successes and failures of AI in social welfare, why we need stakeholder inputs in creating algorithmic systems, and how we can incorporate community values in an AI system. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy. Professor Zhu, can you briefly introduce yourself and what you do here?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Haiyi Zhu. I am an associate professor in the Human Computer Interaction Institute at CMU. I do research in HCI broadly. Specifically, I do research in social computing and human AI interaction. I'm interested in the design and evaluation of AI technologies that have important impact on society.
Awesome. I think your work is very important, obviously, in the context of today's society, because AI used to be a very kind of limited technology that really only experts can get their hands on. But now everyone seems to be using some sort of AI tool to make their life more convenient and more efficient. And I think it's just so, it's gotten so common these days to use AI for everything. Like, oh, I want to listen to music, AI. Oh, I'm writing this email, AI. For any minor inconvenience, we're using AI. And everything is happening so fast. And we really need researchers like you to say, hey, hold on. Is this the best way to use this technology? What happens when it doesn't do what we want it or expect it to do, right? And do we even really need AI to use as like a solution for this problem? So I just think that our hopes for AI have risen so much that we're using it as like a solution for everything, like a penicillin, but in reality, it's not. So to get to your research, obviously the topics that you're researching, they occur on many fronts. And the first one I'd like for us to discuss is your recent work with child welfare. The first question to kind of preface our audience out there, what are some of the biggest problems that we are facing in terms of using like AI and machine learning models for very sensitive social areas like child welfare?
Yeah, I think you made a really good point that AI does not have to be the solution for every problem our society face. And actually, our recent work in child welfare actually exactly illustrates this point. So first of all, the research question we ask is how the AI tool was actually used in real world, particularly in the child welfare system. So to answer this question, we actually conducted a mixed method study and look at a particular AI tool used in Allegheny County, the county where the city of Pittsburgh is. And the tool is called Allegheny Family Screening Tool. And the short name is AFST. And when we started to look at this tool, it had already been deployed in Allegheny County for about 6 years. So we basically just wondering how this tool will actually used. So we visited the call screeners, and the tool was designed to support social workers in making decisions like, oh, whether particular child maltreatment referral cases should be investigated or not. So apparently, that's a very important decision. Any errors in the decision, like false positive, false negative, will have important societal impact and consequences to the families and the kids. So we observed how the social workers use these tools, and we also analyzed the historical data, 2 years of historical data from 2016 to 2018, which involve over 31,000 unique children in those cases. And we want to look at first how the social workers actually use these tools, and then what is the accuracy and racial disparity of these tools. And yeah, we publish results about it, but I'm going to just provide some highlights of the findings.
Mhm.
So first of all, and the social workers, they do not trust the tool very well, and then they do not believe in this tool actually complement the human decision makers' abilities. They perceive important misalignment between the decision target of these tools that are designed for, which is a long-term risk, and they are immediate, like decision target, which is to assess the immediate risks of the children. So they see that what they are doing is trying to assess the immediate risk, but the tool can only like predict the long-term risk. So the misalignment made a lot of people like sort of decided not to use the tool in their actual decision making. Also, there is actually, we see that there is this strong organizational pressure to push people to use this tool, to agree with the tool. Sometimes that is against people's best judgment. And we also see that the public agencies, they tend to actually intentionally provide minimal informations about this tool to the social workers. So the social workers actually have to guess how this tool actually works. We also conducted some data analysis on the actual field, sort of accuracy in the field, and also racial disparity. So in short, we found that the tool itself will have about like 20% racial disparity. So on its own, it would, for example, screen like 70% of the Black children compared to 50% of the white children. And the social workers who use this tool actually overrode the algorithm recommendation and reduced the racial disparity down to 9%. So after we published all of this work, we also had a lot of discussion with relevant stakeholders. And yeah, people indeed raised the question like, why do we need this kind of AI tools in social services? The actual accuracy in the field is really low, and then the racial disparity is high, and the social workers, some people actually describe this like a janitor, and they have to clean up all the mess actually made by the AI recommendation. They have to like override these incorrect or biased recommendations, and then yeah, what benefits actually these tools provide to child welfare systems? I personally think it's a very good question. So what we found is the limitation of this particular tool and this FST and this particular version. And I would say that for this particular version of FST, it really does not provide benefit. We just couldn't see any really strong argument of the benefit it provides. But it does not mean that any kind of AI tools will be useless in this context. So it's really a context-specific questions. In some of the follow-up work, we're trying to helping the public agencies to make good decisions about early on, like whether they should move forward with the AI tools. So in a recent work actually published in this year's CHI, we developed this tool called Citrate AI Guidebook, which includes sets of questions that can help public agencies to make early, to have these like early conversations and deliberations about the benefits and the costs and the intended use of AI, all these potential benefits and harms, and then helps them to make a decision whether they should move forward with a particular AI idea.
Awesome. I noticed how you were talking about how the workers don't really know what the AI was like factoring in its prediction and decision. And this is like a deliberate effort, also on the part of their higher ups in the organization. So this is kind of a question regarding transparency. How you go about striking that balance in terms of how much you should let the people who use these systems know. And because I do know like greater transparency is like a very common recommendation that I think people give when the user is having trouble working with the AI system to better make decisions and such things, right? But like it seems like in this case, greater transparency would not be the optimal solution, or would it be actually contributing to a better collaboration between the users and the system?
Yeah, in this particular case, I would say that transparency, especially the transparencies to the direct users, the frontline social workers, will
Mhm.
help them to make a better decisions. From the people high up, they believe that transparency might lead to some of the gaming behaviors, maybe from social worker or from the families. If they know, for example, the weights or the different features will contribute to the risk scores. However, what we found is like even without sort of telling people how this tool work, people just come up with their own interpretation, and they are maybe very sophisticated but imperfect sort of beliefs about how these tools are used, and they're still going to generate these beliefs and use these beliefs to calibrate their trust and the reliance on these tools. So my stance will be, yeah, you should still provide the transparency and then allow the workers to understand the limitations and capabilities of these AI tools, and then they can actually better integrate the AI recommendations in their decisions. But on the other hand, I feel like a more important issue with this kind of tool is not about transparency. Transparency is, to be honest, I personally feel like it's a relatively superficial part of this problem. And
Mhm.
then, for example, this particular AFST tool, and the biggest issue is actually they are not predicting the things, the
Mhm.
decision targets that the social workers believe are important. So these are like fundamental modeling issues, and then the transparency itself will now help. And we also see like organization sort of a structure incentives that actually do not empower the workers to use their own capability and human judgment and expertise. Yeah, and we see these actually some of the decision makers actually they actually do not trust the frontline workers, their like abilities and expertise. So yeah, those are the issues we see like actually prevent the better design, the use of the tools. And I personally think that transparency, yeah, it's a small it's a relatively, I would say, maybe easier question to tackle because,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a transparency. Everyone knows it's important, but we see a lot like a deeper issues in this type
Yeah.
of tools.
Seems like it's more of like a two-part problem right now with the actual like efficiency and effectiveness of the model itself. Like as you mentioned, like if it's not accurately predicting what we want it to predict, then its utility as a model is essentially useless, right? Like why would we want a model that doesn't work the way we want it to work, right? And then on the other side is like kind of the more human side of how do we, for example, how do we help workers most effectively utilize the tools that they have to its most effective degree. So that's, I think, transparency would probably lie on that aspect, but they're both very much like definitely big problems that people need to focus on. And then I know you mentioned also briefly how there's this belief that like this model kind of perpetuates this racial disparity, this racial bias that is definitely not really healthy for the outcomes that we want to achieve. And regarding that, are you concerned or worried that these models are contributing to almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy where like the consequence of say a wrong prediction could lead to or become a factor in making that prediction come true?
Yes and no. So based
Mhm.
on what we see, first of all, these tools, at least in the child welfare, they tend to they were not designed to replace the human decisions, and they're
Mhm.
supposed to just to support human decision makers, and they provide recommendations, and then the human decision maker will make the final decisions.
Mhm.
And what we see is actually in the context of social work, actually the social workers, they reduce these racial disparity when they actually use these tools. So, and
Mhm.
actually they sort of reduce the disparity to the level that was equivalent or similar to the racial disparity before the use of these tools. So it's like before, it's about like
Mhm.
11%, but actually if we look at this tool itself, they have about like 20% racial disparity. And
Mhm.
but the workers, they didn't blindly follow the recommendation. Yeah, if they blind follow, it will be 20%, but they actually reduce it to 9%. hand. So
Mm-hmm.
the human decision makers in this particular context, and then they are correcting sort of to some extent correcting the
Yeah.
AI recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
But we see a different pattern, for example, in other work. Yeah, I believe I remember there is a study looking at how judges make use these AI tools. Actually, they exacerbate the racial biases. Sort of, they
Mm.
often decisions actually have a higher racial disparity.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's very context specific, and then also racial disparity is a very, very complicated problems, and we are also not saying that disparity, for example, in the screening rate, doesn't necessarily sort of guarantee or it means that there is a systematic racism, and there is a lot of literatures talking about how you should sort of interpret the racial disparity, for example, in screening rate.
Mm-hmm.
At least we are trying to say that, oh, there is this like patterns in this like racial disparity of screening rate that indicate the uneven distribution of the state interventions into black family and white families,
Mm-hmm.
and also there is uneven distribution of the benefits and harms of these interventions. So it is, yeah, the more we look, it's more like a societal
Mm-hmm.
question,
Yeah.
and but on the other hand, we are glad to see that some of our research have some impact. And so after we published the works versus the AP, and they wrote an article about the use of AI in child welfare, and then the Oregon State, and then they said that after they see the article, which like covers our work, and they decided to drop a tool that is very
Mm-hmm.
similar to FST, and they are citing the reason of like concerns regarding the racial disparity.
Mm-hmm.
And we also talked to the White House Office of Technology and Policy, and then we communicated findings with them, and then in the open letter about AI is they actually specific talking about how AI should not exacerbate the existing racial disparities in the society. I guess that's the message we
Mm-hmm.
do want to share, and also, yeah, it's important to keep human in the loop. And then the tools, this kind of tools, should be designed to augment human intelligence or like
Mm-hmm.
human expertise, and instead of trying to replace it. But back to the specific context of child welfare, if you asked me 2 years ago, I might give a different answer. But now I feel like, yeah, tools like AFST might not be necessary in this context. And then I still think that there will be a lot of design opportunities for other types of tools, but not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily you need a tool that predicts the long-term risk in our study and also other studies. And actually, the social workers who know the context. They get to see the families, and they actually have a lot of existing resources, material. They have years experience, and
Mm-hmm.
they are the people who actually will make a better decisions. And then like mining the sort of historical data, administrative data, does not necessarily provide any sort of benefits to the social workers.
It's pretty cool to hear that like some of your research has informed policymakers to decide whether or not to keep or drop these tools that may or may not have kind of like a net positive effect. So that's great to hear. I do have like a kind of a two-part question. I know in one of your papers you kind of included this, let's see, a section on like the low tech versus no tech alternatives, and it's which is kind of like a byproduct of when you question whether or not AI has a place as a solution in these situations. So, do you think it's actually better just to have like a simpler solution? Like a simpler solution might be the best solution, or do you think it's just actually more of a matter of it being too early for the technology to be used in these areas?
So yeah, we believe that actually it's a wicked problem, and then you should use the design process, apply the human-centered design process, and then
Mhm,
we should first understand the problem first, and then what exactly is the pain point of this decision-making process in child welfare, and then we should brainstorm all the solution, which could include AI solution or non-AI solution, high-tech, low-tech, or no-tech solutions. And then we should prototype them, see which one
mhm.
works better, and
Yeah.
then identify the eventual right solution. So to me, I feel like, yeah, we should definitely apply our HCI methods to solve these problems. But unfortunately, in some areas or like some disciplines, and they are not getting this kind of training, and they're just like, oh, they are like have the hammer and trying to find out problems, and then they
Mhm,
we now have machine learning, so apply to any kind of problem that seems to be fit, and then just build a model and deploy it, and
mhm.
then without considering sort of all these consequences. So at
Yeah.
least that's what we see, especially a few years ago. And definitely the time that when tools like FST was created. So
Mhm,
I think nowadays to look at these problems, yeah, we should definitely apply the human-centered approaches, and also we should involve the impacted stakeholders and then frontline workers in the discussion in the design process. Yeah, one of the things originally a lot of these tools were just designed by a few like decision makers in the agency and the developers without engaging the frontline workers, let alone the impacted community members. And then the frontline worker is like, oh, now here is the tool, and this is the
mhm.
interface, and now we are going to use it. So,
Yep.
but we believe that the social workers, these frontline workers, actually they have the uh, most important expertise to inform the design of this kind of tool.
Mhm. Great. So I think we spent enough time on your research regarding child welfare. So we're going to pivot into more of your work relating to Wikipedia and like community driven AI and that area of focus. So to provide some context, everyone knows what Wikipedia is. We all use it. We all use it all the time. And it's a very valuable resource, I mean, for everyone, right? Thanks to all these people who contribute their knowledge to build this very, detailed and intricate website and resource. How Wikipedia comes about, obviously, is you have people who make edits and other people who build on that, and then iteratively, they become better and better over time. One thing with Wikipedia, right, is that they're obviously using some programs oftentimes to make work more efficient, right? You don't want people to mess around with edits and vandalize the work that some people have written. And so they have these filters for detecting when this edit might be actually more harmful and then kind of reversing the edits. So that's like a very common tool, I believe, that Wikipedia editors use. But one problem is when you have a model that's trained on these low quality edits, they don't really pass the level that of level quality that we want in our articles, then obviously a pattern emerges where you discriminate against certain types of contributions. So for example, with anonymous accounts or new users, they're very likely, or well, more likely, right, compared to more seasoned Wikipedia contributors to make low quality edits. And so this has caused like the tools to often be not as encouraging to newcomers when they make edits because you're just kind of rebuking these lower quality edits, and that can contradict the community values, right, of Wikipedia in general. So to end my rant here, in the context of Wikipedia, I've been struggling with this question of, does fairness equate accuracy? Are they actually at odds, almost kind of like a tug of war, right? What is your opinion on that? That's like a very kind of roundabout question. My apologies.
Yeah, in almost all the contexts we have been seeing, fairness and accuracy, they sometimes conflict with each other.
Mm.
And some mathematicians even prove that. So in order to, you can either optimize the accuracy or you can actually optimize the fairness. But fairness could be measured in different ways, and oftentimes it's measured by, for example, disparate in the prediction rate or disparity in the error rate, false positive, false negative. oftentimes the case that the accuracy will conflict with fairness metrics. Unless you have a perfect prediction, which is if you have a 100% accuracy, that's also 100% fair because yeah, everyone got the exactly accurate prediction. So that is not just about Wikipedia. So this is actually there is a whole community called Fair Machine Learning actually studying these issues and then how to balance the trade-off between the fairness and accuracy. And one of the way you can do is to create, for example, different kinds of fairness constraints and then use those constraints when you train the model. But back to Wikipedia, yeah, fairness, it's an interesting questions, and then not everyone care about fairness in the community. But actually, people like talk about these issues in other terms. For example, people are interested in talking about at least many people are interested in studying the gender gap in Wikipedia. So if people, not everyone knows that actually about like 80% or 90% of the editors are male. So as a result, there are much more like a content on Wikipedia about like a male interested topics compared to female interested topic. But of course, you have to define what you mean by male versus female interested topics. But you can see some of the disparity in the completeness of different topics, and many could be attributed to the gender gap in the editor base. There is also issues about newcomers, and then newcomers tend to be like actually as the community grow bigger, we have more and more complicated policies on Wikipedia, which makes the newcomer very hard to adjust. So sometimes they will not treat it very well, and because they are not familiar with Wikipedia policy and culture, and as a result, they leave the community. But also old timers, they will also leave, and as a result, you see a decline in the active editor base because the newcomers just cannot cannot be appropriately sort of integrated into the community. So yeah, these are the issues that we have been observing and not seeing really good solutions yet. But back to my research, some of my recent research is actually still looking at the use of AI tools in the Wikipedia. And one of our studies is trying to see what we could do to engage the community members to create better AI tools. But one of the easiest way for people to engage in the process is actually to engage in the evaluation process, because not everyone can design or create AI, but people should all have a say about how they believe the tools is good or not. So one of the things we recently do is to create a platform that allows the Wikipedia editors to curate an evaluation data set, which is called Wikibench. And we have a paper, and yeah, you can find it online. So, and it is not directly to the sort of bias or like a gender gap or newcomer issues. On the other hand, we feel like in the long run, we still want to engage all the communities into the design process of the tools, and then make sure that everyone, including the minority, especially the minority groups in the on Wikipedia, can have a say about their environment and can like really engage in the design, the evaluation of AI tools deployed in their community.
And no worries regarding with your papers, because I'm going to link all of them later in the description as well. So,
Oh, that's
yeah.
cool.
So if people want to find your work, I will make sure that they have the links and stuff like that. So,
Mhm,
and I know you've done some work regarding. Obviously, you want to balance the efficiency of these models with other goals you have in mind
mhm,
that are very context dependent, right? So, like
mhm,
with like Wikipedia, they're going to have certain values that they want to
mhm,
uphold, and then with other community platforms, they're going to have values that they want to uphold. And so incorporating values, these very abstract ideas into algorithms, I feel like that's a very counterintuitive idea. So in terms of how you would go about doing that, right? It's easy to state your goal, but how
mhm.
would one actually go about doing that?
Right. I think that's a very good question. That's indeed it's the most challenging part of trying to integrating the stakeholder and community
Mm,
values into the algorithm design. So, what you just described is actually a challenge of how to operationalize these values. So, we have done some work, but I don't think, yeah, we have like a find out all the perfect solution for it. One of the things is like, yeah, you definitely need to engage the relevant stakeholders. You want to first understand what they believe is most important. So that's the stages one we call it like soliciting people's value. And
mhm.
then we can like actually demonstrate how the different kind of value, abstract value, like you said, and could be like translated into the algorithm design. And then, for example, fairness, and it's a very abstract and also a social concept. But actually, you can operationalize fairness in very different ways, and then you can translate them into different metrics, fairness metrics. One of the work we did is actually engage the impacted communities in child welfare, and then explain to them, yeah, how the fairness could be measured, yeah, in this way or that way, and then which way do you believe it's most aligned with the fairness you believe. So we as designers and researchers actually develop these tools and to help the practitioners to better do this in future. And eventually, another thing is like how to evaluate. So we also want to make sure that actually the algorithm design actually is acceptable to the stakeholders, and they are satisfied with this design, and they believe that their value actually was respected and is not violated. So
Mhm.
evaluation is also quite important. Some of the things we did, for example, allowing people to curate a evaluation data set, you can see that that's also one way to operationalize sort of
Mhm.
people's like very abstract high level values, but they themselves can translate what they believe is right into the concrete, for example, data points, metrics that could be used to evaluate the AI model.
I know you've talked about in some of your papers this trade-off between like the different aspects that you want algorithm to do. So sometimes if you have the best efficiency, then you might not necessarily have the most like friendliness to newcomers, right? And then if you want a model that's very friendly to newcomers, then it might not necessarily be the best in another aspect. So this question of navigating the different trade-offs, right? What are your thoughts on how we go about that in the future? Would that involve building the tools? Would that involve be like something else maybe you have in mind?
Right. Yeah. Some of our paper indeed is to navigate, in trying to see how we can navigate the trade-offs, these kind of inherent trade-offs in the model building. I always say that it's not the designer's choice. Eventually, it should be the stakeholder's choice. And designer as us, so yeah, we're just trying to explain the trade-off, make the trade-off interpretable, and then it's up to the relevant stakeholders to make a decision. For example, the Wikipedia example you use, and it is, you're right, there are a lot of trade offs, and the model that's good for one group could be bad for another group. But yeah, we developed this tool called Auras Explorer. And the goal is to just showcase and to explain all the trade-off, explaining the performance and trade-offs to the communities, so that the communities can make decisions, what is the most acceptable trade-off.
Sounds good. And in another aspect, when you have models that show this misalignment in its goal or value and the actual outcome that it's outputting, I know you explained our best strategies is just to involve the people who are going to use it, the stakeholders, the users. But let's say you already have this model and it's not really working well. There's a huge misalignment. Do you have any other strategies aside from what we've stated so far? Mhm.
So yes, consider involve stakeholders early on. not just like at the very end and ask
Mhm.
them to evaluate the model at the point that the models has already been built. So
Yep.
trying to understand the stakeholders' value early on and then quickly prototype model and tools and quickly identify if there is any misalignment.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, involving people in the evaluation, that's a must do, but sometimes when you do that, it's already a little bit
Mhm.
late.
Mhm. You mentioned prototyping. Is that possible with like AI models? I think it's easier to imagine prototyping with like other products like physical products or something that you're designing, but with AI, like I feel like with algorithm it's I feel like prototyping must look very different, right?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question, and there is also some new papers and talking about like how you can prototype actually AI algorithms. So there is
Mhm.
still a few ways you could do, and actually, for example, you can use wizard bots and then just quickly prototype and see. You have humans to simulate the algorithms and see people's reaction, etc. So we also did some work. For example, we create a simulation environment, and then for another context, that's for a mental health context, and then we can use the simulation to quickly predict how different matching algorithms will have what kinds of outcomes they will produce, and then the trade-offs associated with different algorithms. But you're right, it's an emerging topic of how we can actually quickly prototype these AI or algorithmic systems.
Mhm. Awesome. I wish I got into it more earlier. Can you briefly also talk a little bit about your work with Wikibench?
Sure. I think I have already mentioned a little bit. So our work with Wikibench is about how we can engage Wikipedia community members in collective curation of evaluation data sets. So we actually create a system that's actually embedded in the Wikipedia editor's everyday workflow. And
Mhm.
it is a part of actually the Wikipedia site. And then people can use our tools and to include and add new data points into the evaluation data set, and they can actually add different labels, and they can actually discuss with each others and to negotiate the labels, and then they can also quickly check using their evaluation data set the performance of different models.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's a recent work we did and just published at Kai this year.
Thank you for that explanation. All right, so one last question to close off our interview. We've had 30 years of HCII so far, and we saw a lot of cool things, come out of the 30 years. Where do you see HCII, both as a field and our CMU department? Where do you see us heading for the next 30 years from your personal position?
Yeah, so personally, I want to see human AI interaction as a field to grow and have a more influence in both the research and the practice. So yeah, we have HCI, human computer interaction, but I believe yeah, human AI interaction, which should be the next generation of HCI. And I want HCI to continue to be the leader in the field of human AI interaction, and to be the or also be the leading educators so that we can educate our next generation of the user experience researchers, our next generation of designers, computer scientists, programmers to understand the potential impacts of AI systems on them, and then they can integrate human values and important stakeholders, their goals, their needs in the design of AI systems to optimize the benefits of AI and reducing the harms, especially in the early stages, and not wait until like FST has been deployed like 6 years and then
Yep.
suddenly realize, oh, there are so many issues with tools like this, and they have already impacting yeah, hundreds of thousands of families and children's. So yeah, I guess that's what I wish.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you so much for giving me your time. I'm sure you're very busy with a lot of different things. All right, and that's it for today. Thank you for tuning in, everyone. And if you're interested in finding out more about Professor Zhu's research and what she does, we'll be linking all of her relevant papers and her website as well in the description below. We'll see you next time. HCI Ideas is a podcast celebrating the 30th anniversary of Carnegie Mellon's Human-Computer Interaction Institute. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow us and recommend it to your friends. To learn more about the interesting research done here at HCII, our friends have created a website showcasing the various papers and topics we talked about today, as well as many more. You can find it at hcii30.com. You should check it out, it's pretty cool. Thank you for listening to HCI Ideas, and we'll catch you next time.